Good morning, everyone. Today we celebrate the great solemnity of the most holy Trinity. We celebrate and profess the central mystery of our faith, the very heart, if you will, of who God is. God is one in three persons. One God who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In our first reading from the book of Proverbs, we have somewhat of an indication, or if you will, a foreshadowing of this revelation of God being three in one. In Proverbs, we hear of wisdom being spoken of in very personal terms. This wisdom that is with God from the very beginning, that has a relationship with God. And as we will know, St. John will tell us at the beginning of his gospel that this wisdom, this word, this logos became flesh and dwelt among us. And then in the Gospel of John, in our passage for this morning, we hear Jesus tell us of the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, who will guide us to all truth. And then the passage concludes with this: everything that the Father has is mine. And for this reason I told you that He, the Holy Spirit, will take what is mine and declare it to you. You see, we are being told, it has been revealed to us the depths of the mystery of who God is. A depth that we could not possibly probe by our reason alone. God has shown us His very face as three in one. A unity in Trinity, a Trinity in unity. Our God is not an impersonal being or solitary person, but a oneness of communion. God is so perfectly one that it is the result of an eternal, perfect communion of persons. The Father loves the Son eternally, and the Son returns that love eternally. And so perfectly that this love between the Father and Son is the Holy Spirit. It is the person gift, the person love. Did you understand all of that? Might seem to be a bit much, right? And that's okay. It's all right, because if we really understood everything there was to who God is, I'd have a rubber room for you somewhere. All right? It's not possible for us as human beings to understand everything that God has revealed to us about who He is, or we'd be God Himself. It's like an iceberg. We just see the tip of it. What has been revealed to us we can come to understand to some degree, but most of what it is and who He is, we could not possibly probe the depth of. You know, there's a story about one of the greatest theologians in the church, St. Augustine, who in the 4th century was trying to write a book about the Trinity called De Trinitate. And he was writing it in a place near the shore, and his head was filled one day with all sorts of ideas, and he was getting confused and didn't know how to just continue to write. He was kind of in a writer's block, if you will. So Augustine tells us that he decided to take a walk along the shore. In the distance, he sees a little boy digging a hole in the sand, and he takes a seashell and runs to the ocean and scoops up some water, comes back to his hole and puts the water in the hole. And then the little boy returns to the ocean with his seashell, scoops up some more water, comes back to the hole, and puts the water in the hole. Well, eventually, Augustine comes up upon the young boy and he says, "Young man, what are you doing?" And the boy says, "I'm trying to put the whole ocean into my hole." And Augustine says, "Young man, you cannot possibly empty the entire sea in all its breadth and depth into your little hole." And with that, Augustine tells us the little boy looks up at him and says, well, neither can you fit the depths of the Trinity into your little head. And with that, Augustine tells us the boy disappeared. A sign to us that this great mystery of the Trinity, yes, we have some inkling of it and understanding, but most of it we could not possibly probe the depth, because it is the very heart of who God is. Yet, it is possible to, if you will, glimpse the footprints or the vestiges of the Trinity in all of creation. It's something that God has kind of left his mark in what he has created, who he is. If you will, one of the greatest vestiges, mirrors, reflections is ourselves. For we have been made in God's image and likeness. And he created them male and female. And he says in the book of Genesis, that's why the husband shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And that oneness in communion is open to a third, a child. So we see in the very way that God has made us, and the way he has made marriage and family, an indication, a vestige, a footprint of who God is. Marriage, then, reflects the Trinity. It is a communion of persons, of husband and wife. A loving communion of selfless, total, faithful love that does not consume each other, but leaves room for its fruit, leaves room for a third, the gift of a child, the gift of love. That's why it's best to try to understand some of the most controversial moral issues of our day concerning marriage in the light of the Trinity. To understand the Trinity is really to help us understand some of those controversial moral issues within marriage. For instance, there's been a great legal and cultural move to redefine marriage in our day. But marriage can't be redefined to include same-sex couples. Why? Because there is not this complementary union that enter into a union that now has the potential within itself for a third. Same-sex, quote-unquote, marriage is not Trinitarian. The use of contraception is also anti-Trinitarian. Because this very act of love between a husband and wife, that is to be the living out of their communion, their selfless, total gift of self, including the giving of one's procreative power, this openness to life, is thwarted and distorted by contraception. It's not then a true giving of oneself, including one's potential for new life. It's not a true sharing and total self-giving. Thus, it is also anti-Trinitarian. Infidelity in marriage. A marriage that is unfaithful one to the other, in which there might be an act even of adultery itself, no longer images that eternal and exclusive bond which is within the Trinity. A bond between husband and wife that serves for a stable relationship for the third, the child. One has gone outside of that bond, and thus has become, again, anti-Trinitarian. So you see, the greatest mystery that we have in our faith, the Trinity, leaves its mark everywhere. And we can better understand sometimes even particular questions about our faith when we understand who God is. I'd like to kind of conclude with a certain word of encouragement. A word of encouragement for all of our marriages and families. And they are words of blessed Pope John Paul II, who once said, "Families, become what you are." And if families are indeed a vestige and footprint of the Trinity, the word then is, families become a mirror of God's own life here on earth. Families, continue to be a witness of fidelity and self-sacrifice. In doing so, you will become what you are. Marriages and families, continue to be a sign of inspiration and even healing for others, so as to become what you are. Husbands and wives, love one another with that total self-giving love, with the Trinity as your model and your power, so you can become what you are. Through the grace of God the Father, who sent His Son to redeem the world, and poured out His love through the Holy Spirit, may all our marriages and our families truly become what you are. Living signs and witnesses of God, who is three in one.